Hey, Catalyst crew. Welcome to Catalyst Corner, episode 107. We're back, baby. I'm Evan.
I'm Jim.
And we have lots and lots to talk about today. It has been a bit of a holiday hiatus.
Yeah, been a little while.
But we're back with a vengeance.
Yes,
so
we certainly are.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm hanging in there. I'm alive and well, so to speak. So let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened.
So this is what happened.
Yeah. Before we get into other things, I'm gonna break this down a little. And I know you know a little bit of it, but we're gonna tell the audience kind of why we've had an extended break, even beyond just a little holiday. So right before Christmas time, I woke up in writhing pain. It was really bad, like 2-3 hours of just solid pain, stomach, chest, and I didn't know what the hell was going on, right? I'm freaking out a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
chest is always scary.
Yeah, but, I'm seeing give it a few minutes, right? And then it went away.
Okay.
It went away. I went to bed. It was okay. I went back to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and all of a sudden it starts hitting me, right? I'm getting very feverish, right? Fever spiking. I got the chills, the sweats.
Yeah.
Right, and just loss of taste, right? So we were supposed to get together. I texted you and I said, I think I have COVID. I can't, I'm not going to come over and think I have COVID, but I hadn't been able, well enough to get a check, a test. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to let a few days go by, right? So this is Wednesday going through Friday. This was happening, right? And I'm like, okay, maybe it'll just run its course. That Saturday, I was fine, right? No symptoms of anything.
You got your taste back and everything.
Not so much my taste, right? But the fever was gone.
Yeah.
My energy was a little bit back, right? And I was able to get out of the house and do some chores.
Now, did you take a COVID test?
No, I still had it.
Okay.
I was going to that day, and then it slipped in my mind. Went to bed that night. Around 1 o'clock on Sunday morning, I woke up and I could not catch my breath. I thought I was dying, right? I didn't know what was going on. I tell my partner, call 911. This is serious, right? I can't catch my breath.
You can't take a deep breath in, or what's going on?
Nothing. I could not take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I could get a lot of words out. And I had the chill, so I'm trembling.
Yeah.
On top of it, right? So the ambulance comes, takes me to the hospital, and hook me all up or whatever. I was borderline sepsis, so I was almost out. I was almost done.
Yeah,
I was on the line.
That'll get you.
And luckily, I got there in time before it did me in.
Yeah.
Right? So if I had waited much longer, it probably would have just did me in.
You know what's funny is, the old timers, they would have just waited it out.
Right.
They would have just been like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. And, Gen X, that's what we do, right? We walk this shit off, right? We don't usually. But, so, I'm in the hospital for the entire day. This is a Sunday, right? They're pumping me full of fluids, pumping me full of antibiotics. I have every test imaginable. So they did a COVID test. Nothing. Negative for flu.
Yeah.
Right. So they think they know what it is. They think that it's a gallstone, right? So I get an X-ray done. I get an MRI done. I get a CAT scan done. The whole 9 yards. They're checking everything, and they're like, well, if it is one or was one, it passed because there's no evidence to suggest it's still there.
And they can. I mean, it's not like, you get gallstones, they can pass,
right,
just like a kidney stone would.
So, they wanted to keep me.
Yeah.
Because they did blood cultures and things like that, but they weren't going to be back for the next day. So I'm like, look, they were having trouble getting a room, and I'm like, look, I'm just going to go home.
At this point, you can breathe again. And
yeah. Once they pumped me full of fluids and got my blood pressure back to normal, and all, I was okay, right?
Yeah, probably not feeling great,
right?
Little shaken up, but not
right
on death's door
and
anymore.
I'm like, I'm just gonna go home, and the doctor's like, okay, but we're going to get these cultures back first thing in the morning. If there's a problem, we're going to call you to have you come right back.
Right.
So the next morning around 8 o'clock, they call up, get back here immediately.
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah, they're like, you have bacteria in your blood. This is extremely dangerous. You got to get back here immediately.
Yeah, because that can lead to like all sorts of nasties.
Right. So I go back. They hook me back up. This time they're like, no, we're going to give you a, you got to get a room.
Yeah, it's like
you gotta
that's how you
monitor
get like meningitis, right?
Yeah. Like, so, so I spent, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in the hospital, missing the holidays.
Nice.
So they, again, pumping me off full of fluids, pumping me off full of antibiotics, right? So finally, I'm safe, right? But I go down for a scope, right?
Yeah, they want to check out your gallbladder.
Right.
And
So they checked out, everything looked good, but they put a stent in to the the tube, right? Even though it didn't necessarily require it because it was nothing, they put a stent in, and it's like, oh, you got to come back in 3 months to have it removed because it doesn't dissolve on its own. We actually have to go in there and remove it, but in these next 3 months while it's in there, you're going to have no problems. Like, so if you did get another stone,
it's just going to pass right through.
Right through.
Right.
Okay, cool. So I got to go back and do that. But here was the worst part of it all, right? So besides almost being dead,
yeah, the sepsis is scary.
yeah. The other thing they said is, okay, well, you're going to have to be a week on these antibiotics, right? And this, that. But the problem is, they're like, you're going to have, besides being very fatigued, you're going to have no concentration. Like, you can't concentrate. So
because of the antibiotics?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So for 2 weeks, I couldn't draw. Because I couldn't.
Oh, my God,
2 weeks
dude.
went by, and I couldn't, I want to draw, and I'm like, I can't concentrate at all. I don't have the coordination. I don't have the, so I'm back to being okay, except, the one thing I want to do, I can't do.
Right.
I can't. So 2 weeks go by, I can't draw. I'm just basically, 75% at health level. But, luckily it passed enough where, now I'm back and I've been drawing for the last month or whatever it's been, back to normal as far as that stuff goes. But yeah, so, besides a little bit of holiday break, there was a big medical emergency, but to anybody listening, I'm doing okay.
Yeah, way to scare us a little bit on that one.
There you go.
Get your shit together,
Yeah, I'm
would you?
trying.
God damn. I do not have a story like that.
Yeah.
We've had some good stuff, though. We got into the National Cartoonist Society,
absolutely.
so that's pretty cool.
Great.
Good to be with, like-minded individuals and artists and creators.
For
and,
sure.
Real honor to be chosen to take part of that. Got a show coming up in March.
Yep.
Pretty excited about that. Store's cooking.
Yeah.
We're cooking.
Yeah.
We got the big prints out now.
Yeah.
People are starting to order those.
Yeah,
So
besides the the sales going through the roof, it's like the amount of different merchandise that is happening on a regular basis. So, anybody listening, if you haven't checked out the store, you're missing a lot of great stuff.
and we are actually going to be in a retail store at the mall.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Coming up in April. So lots of exciting stuff. We're grooving. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So obviously it's been about, what has it been, 2 months?
Yep.
I imagine you've watched one or two films.
I most certainly have. And I will give, just a run. So I watched the new Beetlejuice.
Yep.
I saw
Yep,
that.
you caught that.
Have you seen that
I have.
one?
I have.
Not bad, right? I liked it. It was not just a rehash of the first one.
I thought there was a little too much going on.
Yeah.
There were too many villains.
Yeah.
I think it should have either been Monica Bellucci or the kid.
Right.
And I think that kind of hurt the film a little bit because, when you had both of them and both plots revolved around different characters, neither one had enough time to really, neither one was bad, but neither one had enough weight to really, sort of be Beetlejuice in the first one. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Jenna Ortega did well.
Yeah. I think, Winona Ryder was great,
Yeah, I thought that the music scene was a little long.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
But I mean, again, for a remake, not a part two, for how many years later, I thought it was not too bad.
No, it didn't feel super bankrupt or anything.
Right.
You know, it still had a cool Tim Burton
Yeah.
vibe to
Yeah.
it. Keaton was on point, obviously. And, you know, there were a lot of callbacks to the
Yeah.
original. So,
Yep. Absolutely. I also caught Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. Did you see this?
I have not seen this yet.
You know, this was kind of a tearjerker.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, you know
Well, yeah.
the story, right?
Oh, you don't say.
But it's even right. But it gets more in depth. You know what I mean? Because it's, you know,
They just kind of talk about his struggles, or
yeah,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's to go from, you know, getting the role of Superman.
Well, you're on top
right?
of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a lot of home video, like stuff you've probably never seen before.
This was before, just for like our younger listeners who don't know this stuff. You know, if you do, that's great. You're in the club. But if you don't know, like Superman back then, like before comic book movies were, a tri-monthly event or whatever, that was a big deal.
Right.
You know, like people really, that was really one that kind of has always, similar to Batman, but Superman has always kind of hit
Yeah.
with people,
Sure.
you know? And so, yeah, you know, being Superman was a big deal. You know, it's a big deal now, but it's a much more saturated market than it was.
Yeah. And you know, I don't think that anybody, you know, when you look at it, right, I mean, obviously people have portrayed the role well, and I'm not, you know, Henry Cavill obviously portrayed the role well. You've had
the
people on.
tone was bad, but you know, Cavill did fine.
But back then, you know, you're talking about in the 70s, right? You know, that wasn't a larger than life. It was larger than life in the fact that, yeah, you had like George Reeve in the 1950s show. But something about Christopher Reeve, when he first came out and you saw him,
He is
in that
Superman
suit,
to
right?
a lot of people.
Right. It's like something just happened, right? It was just like that's Superman. Like if Superman came to life, that is who. And like I said, everybody's done a good portrayal, but that you looked at it and said, no, that's Superman. That is, when you think about Superman, that's who he would look like. Exactly.
Right. I mean, he really does embody sort of the origins of the character.
And, you know, it's just, it was just so sad seeing, you know, the story. And then obviously, you know, it talked about, you know, he had a wife he had 2 kids with, didn't want to settle down with her, and then he meets you know, so they, after years and years of being together, they break up. Like within 2 weeks, he's with someone else, you know, Dana Reeves, and they get married. So, you know, the first wife, you know, like 15 years together, 2 kids, you didn't want to commit, then like 2 weeks later, you know. So he kind of did a dickish thing there, you know, had a kid with her, but you know, just the whole thing of, you know, you see his deterioration, but he's still trying to, you know, do things, you know, make movies, he'd be a spokesperson, you know, really thought that he was going to be able to beat it and start and walk again, right? I mean, they were trying to do some
he was
things
doing
with
like
him.
stem cell therapy and everything.
So they were really trying, you know, he was at the forefront of really trying to see about being able to beat it, and then, you know, that could make it so that generations behind him would be able to, you know, become unparalyzed.
Yeah,
but
it's similar to kind of like what Michael J. Fox has kind of done with his diagnosis and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And
and then obviously he passes away, and then you find out she's got cancer, and she passes away shortly thereafter. And it you know, again, it was just a very touching story. It was just very sad. You know, to see.
Yeah, not the feel-good movie of the year.
No, it really wasn't. But, you know, that's the thing. It's like this guy was on top of the world, and then to see it, you know, to see it all, not that it went downhill, because, hey, he was doing stuff still, but just
right, but just to kind of have something, you know, so life-altering happen to you, and still be able to find the strength to kind of, you know, carry the torch and push forward for humanity is, you know, he was Superman.
Yeah, and I've seen, like I said, but the one last movie I want to talk about real quick. You ever see this movie called Triangle?
Bermuda Triangle one?
No, just Triangle.
No.
So there's a movie. So there's a girl, a single mother,
Yeah.
has a son who's autistic, right?
Yeah.
So she goes out. So they show her and the son. The next thing, she's out. She's going to go out on a boat ride with a bunch of friends, right? So there's a guy that she's friendly with. He's got a buddy, and then there's another couple that they're also friends with, and a girl that they brought along.
Okay.
They go out on a boat, and a big storm hits and capsizes the boat, right? And one girl, she just disappears, right? So she drowns. No one can find her. So they're on the capsized boat. Another large boat all of a sudden appears. They go onto that large boat. And no one's on, right? No one's on board. They're trying to find anybody on board this large boat, but they can't find anybody.
So you're in a ghost ship situation.
Pretty much. Then all of a sudden, there's somebody, and they start killing people.
Oh.
And then the one girl, the one main star, they're saying she's the one doing it, right? So they're saying, he just said you killed us. So all of a sudden, what you find out is like it keeps on regenerating, right? So what happens is this girl kills all the passengers, and then it starts over again. They go back to the dock.
Okay, so it's
The whole
like
thing.
you get the Groundhog Day sort
Right,
of thing.
right. And so so what happens is she starts to get a little bit of an idea, like, okay, I get it. If once I kill everybody, it starts over again. So I'm going to kill it. So what I have to do is kill everybody, but now I'm going to go home, and I'm going to start a new life, right? I know what I need to do now, right? So she does that, right? She kills everybody, gets off the boat, heads back home, and she's there, right? Obviously she's there because everything is a repeat. Well, you come to find out she's highly abusive to this autistic son of hers. The father left her. She takes it out on the kid, and she's very physically and verbally abusive. So she's like, okay, I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to take the kid, and I'm going to make amends, right? I know what I'm doing. I know what I did wrong. I don't want to be that person anymore. So now I'm going to kill this version of me, this horrible version of me, and I'm going to take the kid. We're going to get out of town. We're going to redo our life. So she's going out of town, and a seagull hits the windshield. It gets blood on the windshield. The kid starts freaking out. She starts freaking out, gets into a car accident, and they're dead, right? And so all of a sudden, but the girl that came off the boat is still alive. And then all of a sudden, a taxi man comes, and he's like, hey, you need a ride. He gives her a ride, and it's back to the boat dock to start the whole thing over again. So basically, it's like purgatory, right? This is the boatsman, like the taxi is the boatsman. He takes you,
right.
And you're
He's
just
the ferryman,
right.
Yeah.
He's the ferryman, and you're just you're in this purgatory where you're this piece of shit, awful, abusive, physically violent mother, and you're trying to escape that, but you never can. You're always going to come back to that same place. So you're always going to kill the kid because the kid was freaking out, and you died in a car accident. But you're going to have to relive, that failure forever.
Yeah, brutal.
So I thought that, it was a little bit, even though it was like an hour and a half, it felt like 2 hours and a half, so it felt a little bit long.
Yeah, so it dragged a bit then.
It did. I definitely think they could have trimmed it quite a bit, but it was an interesting premise. So not a bad movie, not a bad one to catch.
Yeah, so that's it. Where'd you watch that one?
It was just an on-demand movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I like those kind of sleeper ones that you don't really know what you're getting into.
It was interesting. So, what about you? What have you seen?
Lots.
Yeah, I bet.
So I recently watched, and this was one you had told me about maybe a couple years ago at this point, The Outsider.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, I did. I really liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say it's pretty typical of a Stephen King series.
Sure.
Right? Like, the ending isn't anything
Yeah. No,
crazy.
it never is. Yeah.
Right, it never is with him.
Right.
The beginning was fantastic,
Yeah.
though. And the tension was really, really
Yeah.
well done. So that is a solid 10 episode
Yeah.
watch. I caught Nosferatu.
Oh, okay. What did you think?
Fantastic.
Oh, was it? Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So, it was a excuse me. I haven't seen it at home yet,
Okay.
so I'm not sure. I actually went to the theater.
Oh, you went to the theater for it. Okay.
This is the first time in maybe 4
yeah.
or 5 years.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if it was just the theater I was in, or if the color grading is just maybe a little too dark. I kind of liked the ethereal black and white sort of feel to it.
Sure.
But there were times where I was like, let's bump the
Yeah.
the contrast up a little bit so
Sure,
I can see what the
sure.
fuck is going on.
right.
He is a master. I mean, Robert Eggers is a master.
Yeah.
It-
Oh, yeah.
It's just incredible what he can get out of his sets and his actors, and again, I mean, Nosferatu the original is a classic, but there's not a lot to work with.
No.
No,
not at all.
I think Lily Rose Depp was fantastic.
Was she? That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it because that was a question mark going in. People had some reservations there.
Yeah, she was all in on it.
Good.
You kind of believed that she was going through it. Skarsgård was phenomenal.
Yeah.
There was some controversy over the look.
Yeah.
I think he looked great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I was planning on going to the movies myself to see it, and then all of a sudden the medical stuff happened and I never got a chance, but I'm glad it's good because I am looking forward to seeing it.
Oh, it is top tier. It's the thing that I think is kind of funny is I think a lot of people. So I saw a lot of people praise it.
Yeah.
It got nominated for a couple of Academy Awards, and I saw, which is insane because horror movies never get nominated for
Right.
Academy Awards.
Exactly.
So for that to happen, I think is, nothing crazy. It was like best cinematography
Yeah.
and,
But still.
things like that,
Yeah.
makeup and but I just think that, I think people went into it just expecting like a horror flick.
Yeah.
And it is art,
Right.
like at the end of the day, it's a high piece of art. Nicholas Hult was good.
Yeah.
Not amazing. Not,
Okay.
He was
Okay.
good. He was solid.
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson was okay. Who's the girl that played Cassandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine?
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
though?
I know you.
Can't remember her name.
Yeah.
But she was in it.
Okay.
She did great. So solid acting all around. Skarsgård and Lily Rose Depp stole the
Nice.
show.
Excellent.
It's long.
Is it?
It's got to be like 210,
Oh, wow.
220.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would have benefited from being longer or shorter.
Yeah.
That's my only
okay.
real critique of it. I think if you had kind of kept going and added a bit more to it, that could have been interesting. Or if there were some things that you could have cut out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Skarsgård's insane.
He is. He's
He's had a weird run though.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's had a couple of stinkers.
Yeah.
The last 3 or 4 have been bad, but as a character actor, he
Yeah.
seems to really be able to.
I think the thing with him is, right, and the problem is that I think he gives it his all, but in some cases there's such, there's nothing to work with.
So it's the Nicolas Cage thing.
Yeah, I think that he has he gives everything he can, but it just the material's not there. Like The Crow, right? That version of The Crow, the material wasn't there. Like
Right, and
he
he's
gave the
not
performance.
the worst part of that movie.
No, he gave the performance, but the writing and just the whole thing wasn't there. Whereas, like in this movie, it is. I think that he definitely gives his all. I just think that sometimes the movie itself limits him to, and that's why some of those movies flop and some do extremely well. Because I think that the writing around him has to be solid. Because he's going to give you a strong character performance.
Right. And so what I another thing I thought was kind of interesting, and again, I've been very clear on this. I think Robert Eggers is one of the best directors of my generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because he's from Keene, okay? I'm
Right.
not just repping the
There
local
you
New
go.
Hampshire boy. I think he's someone that cares about his craft, does meticulous research, and tries to bring, if he's doing a period piece, which is all 4 of his films have been, he's going to try to bring that sort of to life. And there are moments in there, like when he goes to the town before he goes to the castle, where he's surrounded by the Romany and the locals and things, and it's probably maybe a minute scene, right? It's just kind of setting it up for him to go on the journey to the castle or whatever. But just that sort of slice of life that you get,
Yeah.
Just seeing the different music and instruments that they're playing, the type of foods that they're eating, the way that they're dressed, the way that they are afraid of sort of, the folk tales and everything. And to be able to do that in a minute,
Right.
is just incredible. And this is a true gothic horror film,
Right.
And
Sure.
and when I say gothic horror, I'm talking Victorian era,
Yep.
Frankenstein, gothic horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because I had read some negative reviews talking about how sort of sexual it was,
Yeah.
right. And the thing of it is that's a huge element of gothic horror, because
Sure.
it was Victorian era England. There was repressed sexuality, and so
Yep.
it came out in the stories.
Right.
And it wasn't grotesque.
Sure.
It was more suggestive. But I think, again, because he's a masterful director, I think sometimes, what you don't see is more powerful than what you do
Sure.
see, sort of thing. And so even though, there was a little nudity, but just sort of the scenes, I think, for people that are a little more maybe conservative, and I don't mean that in a political sense,
Right.
about sexuality, I could see, like, I'm in the theater, and there were a few people kind of squirming in their seats during certain scenes.
But that's what you want. I mean,
Right,
but you
and
want
that-
that.
but that's the
you
thing, is
need a
that-
you get a physical reaction out of the audience.
But that's the
in,
thing.
in whatever. Then you've succeeded.
Right, and that's the thing for me, is that I want you to be uncomfortable.
Right.
I it doesn't even have to be uncomfortable. I want you to cry. I want you to laugh. I want you to be moved.
Yeah.
If it's true high art, I want it to move you.
Right, but I mean, but even with that, right? If it's meant to make you feel uncomfortable, and you are,
Yeah, but is it meant to make you feel uncomfortable,
Well,
or is it
maybe.
just there's a certain subsect of people?
Well, see that I think that that's how do you view it, right? How do you personally view it, right? If that's a subject that makes you uncomfortable, then it's going to make you uncomfortable. And if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, you're going to look at it and you're going to be enthralled in what's going on, right? But either way, you're going on a ride. And that's, but he's playing to every single audience of how does this should elicit a response. You're not, if you're just sitting in your seat, then he's failed. He's trying to elicit a response. Whatever that response is, however you take it, however you view it, as long as you're responding in whatever way, that's success, and I think that's what he does. He can get you to feel a certain way, and maybe the way I feel about it is different than you feel, but we're still reacting. Even if we're reacting differently,
Right.
we're both reacting.
And the thing is, there are moments that would make me squirm that I would look around and no one else was squirming
Right.
about. So it's that. Have you seen any pictures of the Count at all?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
So Skarsgård is gone. Like
Yeah.
there is not a moment in that film where you look at Orlok and go, "Oh yeah, that's Bill." Like you look at Pennywise, you can kind of see
Sure.
Bill.
Yeah.
Right. You look at Orlok and you're like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
Yeah. Nice.
And the voice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's melodic.
Is
it's
it
powerful. It's almost got. It really is melodic. It has a music, and they've talked about he trained with an opera singer, and there is almost a song quality, to the way that he speaks.
Yeah. Well, and that plays to the original, right? I
Well,
mean,
the original was a silent film.
No. But I mean,
Dracula. Yeah.
Well, right, but I mean, even with the original, right? They had some music to it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they'll put like a little
Yeah. They put a track behind it
right.
or whatever.
And I think that's playing to that version of it, right? Is that you had that melodic music playing, even though it was a silent film, and now you add that element, right? I'm not gonna play the music. He's gonna talk melodically, kind of hearkening back to that original film.
But it was just, it was one of those ones. I'll say I don't think it's his best work. I think, for me personally, I think the most uncomfortable I felt in any of his films was The Witch, and I don't know if that was just because it was his first and I hadn't really been exposed to sort of dread.
I don't know. That movie still that still put you on the edge of your seat.
But I won't say for me personally it's his best work.
Yeah.
What I will say, though, is that from seeing The Witch, I've seen all 4 of his films at this point, The Witch, The Northman, The Lighthouse, and now this. But you can tell that as a filmmaker, he's growing and maturing. And I don't know, he's gone on some interviews saying, Christopher Columbus sort of kind of helped him through this one.
Sure.
So I don't know if just having the guidance of someone like Chris Columbus to sort of, point the raw talent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or focus it. Because,
yeah, you're having a true professional now
right. This is
that's
someone
guiding you.
Right.
Yeah.
Chris Columbus, whether you like his films or not, he's someone that's been in the industry, since the 80s.
Right.
And he's done some blockbuster films.
He's got some big films.
So I do think it's interesting, kind of to see that mashup, and I think, Eggers is smart to take advantage of that relationship because I think it makes him a better filmmaker.
Right.
Nosferatu is probably technically a better film than The Witch. It's just from an uncomfortable and
right.
maybe because I already knew the Nosferatu story and I've seen the movie and
yeah, I mean that probably
there's that element.
Yeah, comes into play a little bit that it is a remake, so you kind of know the story. Yeah.
But it's coming to Peacock at the end of the month.
Nice.
So you'll be able to catch that. I want to when you watch it, I think what we'll do is I'd like to have kind of a deep dive into it because there's a lot there.
Yeah, definitely.
And then before we move on, I have an interesting one for you.
Okay.
So I don't really go in for award season.
Sure.
I don't. Part of me feels like it's kind of a jerk off. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it's one thing if you, like, to me, before they used to do what they're doing now with the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
So now you can buy tickets digitally and watch the movies online, which is nice that you can have access to it. But to me, it was always this thing that you would just kind of read about.
Right.
And then, if it won an award, it would get the laurel.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't as much of a jerk off as like the Oscars.
Yeah.
Right? Where you got to take 4 hours of fucking television.
Right.
Primetime television to give yourself an award.
Right.
I do like to read who won the next day. I always like to just keep, because it exposes me to films maybe that wouldn't be on my radar or whatever.
Sure.
And so the Golden Globes happened.
Yep.
And there's a film called Emilia Perez
Oh, okay.
that swept
Yeah.
the Golden Globes. Mm-hmm. I had never heard of this film.
Yeah. I didn't until then either.
And I didn't really know what it was about or whatever, and whatever, it swept, right? Mm-hmm. And we have TikTok, so I sometimes, it's a bad habit, I'll scroll. Mm-hmm. I'll scroll through the TikTok.
Yeah.
And things started to kind of come out about this Emilia Perez movie.
Yeah.
And the Wicked fans were outraged.
Oh, okay.
Because Wicked won Golden Globe.
Yeah.
Which was it was like an achievement award, basically.
Yeah.
Like that's what they won, was an achievement award.
I mean, Wicked didn't set the world on fire.
No, but
I mean,
think,
people liked it,
right.
don't get me wrong,
No.
and it did well, but it didn't set the world on fire.
I don't think it set the world on fire. I think for a certain group of people, it was everything they could have wanted and more.
Sure.
I think it definitely pushed musicals into the pop culture zeitgeist for a significant amount of time. Mm-hmm. But I agree. I don't think it's, I don't think it changed the world.
No.
But whatever. So a lot of the hate about the Emilia Perez stuff was that, that song, she's talking to the doctor about the sex change operation. And it's not good music. It's bad.
Oh, okay.
Like people would play the clip. Like they'd play a clip of like Cynthia singing, the fucking Defying Gravity or whatever, and then they'd play that.
Yeah.
Right? And they'd be like, how did this win so many Golden Globes? And then you're going to give Wicked none, right? And I kept hearing about this, and initially I was like, yeah, fuck Emilia Perez. Like, and I'm thinking like, oh, maybe this is more, woke bullshit or whatever. And it's just them still pushing agenda, right? Mm-hmm. And so one night, my partner was at work, and I was, I had finished the orders, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I turned Netflix on, and I came across it.
Okay.
And this was probably about a week after the Golden Globes, and I said, you know what? Because I had seen Wicked.
Yeah.
Right? And I had seen the Broadway show. Mm-hmm. And I think it was true to the Broadway show. I think the music was good. Cynthia's a fantastic singer, and she was great in it. Mm-hmm. Even Ariana Grande was great.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Everybody played their part. Yeah. Right? So I'm finding, my bias immediately is just with all these other people about Wicked, and I'm just like, oh, Wicked should have at least, I don't think this Emilia Perez should be beating Wicked.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I turned it on, and it was 2 hours and something minutes, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna get up to where that song that was trending on TikTok is, and I'm gonna shut it off because I'm gonna hate it. And I started watching it, and I have a very complicated relationship with that movie.
Oh, okay.
And I'll explain to you why. So a lot of the hate from this film is people feel that it's culturally insensitive towards Mexico.
Oh.
Because the film is basically about a cartel leader who wants to transition into a female.
Yep. Okay.
And I guess the way Mexico is portrayed and everything is pretty inauthentic and things of that nature. I mean, it's one of those things where it was directed by a Frenchman, right?
Okay.
And he definitely didn't go down to Mexico to learn about the culture or anything. So I think there was a lot of hate on that.
Yeah, I know Mexico said they wanted no part of being associated with it because of its portrayal, but that's about all I know.
Right, and I think if you look at it, the reason I have such a complicated relationship to it is because I totally understand where everyone's coming from.
Okay.
I do think that if you look at it as sort of the vertical slice that it is, it is culturally insensitive. But I think if you can understand that it's a vertical slice and it is not representative of the entire country of Mexico, maybe I'm wrong for giving it a little more leeway in that regard.
Sure.
But in any case, so none of the songs in the movie are, banger hits or anything.
Yeah.
Like, no, nobody's winning a Grammy for the
Sure.
Amelia Perez soundtrack. That being said, I watched the whole film. I enjoyed it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I really did. I mean,
right.
it was weird.
Yeah.
It was just so strange. The plot itself is so fucking out there, right? And the fact that they throw sort of the musical element into it too makes it even more insane. And so when I finished it, I was like, huh. And so then I started thinking, and I wanted to ask you about this. I think this is going to get me some hate. I think Amelia Perez is a better movie than Wicked.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's having seen both, I think Amelia Perez as a film is a better movie than Wicked is. And what I mean by that is I don't think Wicked, again, like you said, I don't think it flipped the script. I think Wicked was very much a cookie cutter copy of the play.
Yeah, I think Wicked is a corporate movie. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure. And I know people love the play, and I don't.
Yeah.
And I have no hate.
And there's nothing wrong with liking it.
But
I'm
the
just
thing
saying
is-
it was made specifically to be a marketing tool. You know what I mean? Like, this was a corporate. We can market this. We can get it out. We got the two parts. Like, this was not high art by any means.
No, and
you know what I mean?
And I'm not saying that Amelia Perez is even close to something like Nosferatu or anything.
Right. Sure.
But what it got me thinking about, because again, in my opinion, I think the music in Amelia Perez is bad.
Yeah.
Like all of it. I don't think anybody really blows any of the songs out of the water. I don't think Zoe's really cut out for, being a music man, so to speak. I do think that the soundtrack of Wicked is on a different planet compared to the Amelia Perez one.
Sure.
Now, all of that being said, at what point does the music factor in? So if you put Amelia Perez and Wicked up against each other, which they did in the Golden Globes for Best Comedy Musical, whatever the other, it's one category, right? Like best movie, best comedy or musical, I think is what it is. And Amelia Perez won over Wicked. So at what point, I mean, where does the music come into something like that?
Well, here's the thing, right? I look at it like when you're watching the TikToks, right?
Yeah.
And you're hearing the songs, right? Are they people playing it that are appreciating it, or are they making fun of it?
What, the Amelia Perez stuff?
Yeah.
They're making fun of it. It's your typical TikTok brain rot stuff. It's just people playing the song and making a face on the camera and just being like, this beat Wicked, really?
Right. And so
but taking that bias out of it, what I mean by it is, and I mean this even bigger than Wicked versus Amelia Perez. In that category, right? Let's just even cut it down to just musicals, right? is the story more important than the music?
In a musical?
Yeah.
No, I think the music is more important.
Before I watched Amelia Perez, I would have agreed with you. But having watched Wicked and having watched Amelia Perez, I think the story is the foundation that everything else is based off of, because the music in Amelia Perez is not better than the music in Wicked. But it is a better film.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing, right? If a song, and I look at it like this, right? We know the songs on Wicked, right? We know they're highly produced, right? We know that
they're Broadway musical songs.
If a movie like Amelia Perez, which is a musical that no one knows anything about, right? When it came out, like, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't hear about it till just recently. I didn't even know this thing existed, and I didn't even know it had music in it till you just told me.
Well, neither did I.
Right. So if you're telling me, though, that any of the music got into pop culture in any way, it's more important than Wicked, because it wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't meant to happen. Wicked is produced to make sure that happens. And if something can come in and it could make a statement in music, like for a musical, when you didn't know anything about it, I think it's more important. I think that the music... So I'm agreeing with you to the point where the story maybe lends more importance, but I do think that if that movie can put a song out that has any pop culture, and you
right,
can
if
grab...
it enters the zeitgeist
right,
at all.
And anybody can grab onto it,
right.
I think that makes it more important than Wicked, because Wicked is corporate to be there. You know it's going to be
it's
there.
It's like Rocky versus Drago,
right.
kind of, right?
Sure.
Like Rocky is,
yeah,
the underdog in that situation. Drago was
right.
built in a lab, right?
And you may and when Rocky beat him in the second in that bout, right? You're not expecting that to happen. Like, that's not supposed to happen. You shouldn't even have. Not only should you not have won, you shouldn't even have been that close to winning.
Right.
But so I think that if you come up with a song that.
But I guess my question is then, because this is kind of caused me to re-examine sort of musicals in general.
Yeah.
Is that just in the I guess could be whatever, whether but even just going off of awards, right? Are you awarding that category for the film or the music? Because to me, 9 out of 10 times I would have told you, oh, of course Wicked would have won. And then this Amelia Perez wins, and I see all this negative backlash and whatever, and I give it a chance just out of morbid curiosity, really. And I'm sitting there going, man, the music in Wicked is way better, but Amelia Perez is a musical. They both came out in the same year, and it's a better film than Wicked is. So it falls under the musical category. So at what point, I guess, in that category, does the story? The Golden Globes seem to think so.
Yeah, and I think that when you didn't have any business being as popular as you became against what you thought would be a juggernaut like Wicked, and it goes back to what I said earlier. I think that part of the problem is that Wicked did not set the world on fire. Had Wicked set the world on fire, I don't think that it would have happened. But I think that Wicked did not live up to expectations to the level that they anticipated, and for this movie to come out and even challenge it at all, I think makes this movie take the awards, which it did.
And another thing I think is kind of interesting is I would be interested to see, because again, this is one that is stumping me, because generally I don't agree with critics.
Sure.
I tend to lean more towards audience scores.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But with this film, I sat down out of morbid curiosity with bias and ended up agreeing with the critic. It rates out highly with the critics, and it kind of tanks. It doesn't tank. I shouldn't. It's not. It's not a fucking Velma.
Yeah.
But it kind of doesn't resonate with the audience, at least on paper. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this particular movie, it's a musical, first of all, so you're already putting it in a niche sort of category, right? Like, not everybody's going to sit through a musical.
No.
And then to make it about, and again, I don't think it was particularly powerful. Like, there wasn't a lot of exploration into sort of what the cartel member was going through with the transition. It wasn't very heavy on those themes. It was just kind of more of the, it was more surface level with the transition. This character's transitioning, right? And then it kind of explored. It was more themes of, like, can you, is anyone redeemable, basically, is kind of where it went. And I know the trans crowd was kind of vocal about the fact that they didn't like that it didn't really represent sort of trans.
Sure.
And I think on a surface level, I think they did okay, because he had a family and everything, and there are moments when he's a woman that he does interact with his family, and there's that element of it's not selfish that you wanted to transition, right? But you can't, you faked your death because, again, you were a cartel member, and you can't, obviously that's machismo, you can't transition, right? And now you're playing the aunt, right? Basically, is like, oh, this was my brother, come live with me, I want to be with my family, right?
Sure.
But at what point does it become selfish, even, right?
Yeah.
To sort of, because you want to control, you want to be the paternal figure in that family still, but you've made this choice to become who you are.
Right.
So there are interesting themes in the movie, and that's kind of why I thought, I was like, well, I didn't get any of that shit from Wicked. I got, we shouldn't, racism is bad, and everybody deserves a chance to fly. Like,
sure.
Wicked is absolute cookie cutter.
Yeah, but that's exactly what it is. And again, there's a lot of people. But there's the two things, right? You got, Wicked is totally cookie cutter. And then, like you said, this, even though it may not go deep into the transitioning and all that, there are going to be people that are going to not watch it because that element exists in it,
right.
Period.
So that's what I'm saying.
You can't look at the audience, really, because there might have been a lot of people that don't like the theme and didn't really give the movie, not really giving the movie the fair chance.
But then I think the other half of that is, there is a diehard Wicked fan base that's going to flame it because it's beating, it's beating my movie.
Sure, that's absolutely going to happen, and that happens. But that happens all the time, every year. I mean, almost every year, the movie you think is going to be successful isn't the one that wins the awards, even though you think, hands down, that's going to be the movie that does it. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's like, yeah, that movie was supposed to do what it did, but this movie wasn't. And, that's cinema. Cinema is, not, hey, I made the corporate cookie cutter, big blockbuster that has this big fan base. This movie was, no one even knew what the hell this thing was, and for it to have any traction whatsoever, even to be any type of competition, it's the better movie.
I just think it was very interesting for me, sort of as a case study, because I think before watching that, if you had asked me, is the music the most important thing in a musical, I would have said, yeah, of course. I mean, like, what the fuck are you going for, right? You're going to hear the songs, right? And then after seeing it win the Globes, and having seen Wicked and this, I don't think that's the case. I think that at the end of the day, this is film. This is film. I think if you want to put Emilia Perez on Broadway, up against Wicked, Wicked blows it out of the water.
Sure.
Because it's musical theater.
Right.
Which is a totally different experience.
Right. You're going for the songs more and the set pieces.
Right, and the pageantry and everything
Right.
like that. I think that is a much different experience than sitting down and watching a film. And so I think it was the right call. I really do. I think that, of the two, it has a lot of problems. It's not a perfect film. I wouldn't,
Sure.
I wouldn't give it an A or anything like that. I just think in that category, it does beat Wicked for me. And I wanted to,
Cool.
I was curious to see. Let us know in the comments too. Do you think in the category of musicals, is music the end all, or is story still king?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear people's opinions.
Now, all that being said, I don't think it deserves fucking 13 Academy Award nominations.
Of course not.
That's insane,
Right.
to me.
Well, I think that's a little bit of pandering.
Right. So there is pandering elements to it, but I wanted to bring it up because I know. I know we're really hard on, whatever, I hate woke as a term because
Sure.
it boils down a complex issue into such a fucking soundbite. But I just thought it was, I just think it's so interesting that these things can kind of be come at from so many different directions, right? I do think it deserves the win over Wicked. I don't think it deserves 13 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Because it's not the best picture of the year.
No.
I think if you had to ask me, it of the categories in musicals that I'm aware of, I think it beats Wicked just because it's a stronger film.
Sure.
And for me, I'm going to the movies. I'm not, I'll watch a musical. I'll watch it.
Sure. Yeah.
But the story for me is what's important.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe I'm just, I'm getting old and becoming part of the establishment. I'm agreeing with the fucking the foreign press.
Well, no, I think that I think that that has. I think it's a little bit different because, like I said, I think that I think that Wicked. Again, I think that people are looking at it and say, yeah, Wicked is what it is, but.
Well, Wicked. Listen, don't discount Wicked.
No, I'm not
Wicked,
discounting what it is.
Wicked did incredibly well at the box office.
Sure, but I think, but to me, it's just manufactured. Like again, how is it not going to do what it did? You're taking something that's highly successful and just taking it off the stage and putting it onto the screen. Right, I mean, you're not rewriting anything. It's not new. It's pretty much already done.
And here's another element, at least, for me personally, right? I don't look at any of the performances in Wicked and go, like, oh, like Cynthia made it her own.
Sure,
she did. But at the end of the day, it's still Wicked. You're still Elphaba.
Right.
Like, I didn't leave that film going like, wow, that really flipped my expectations.
Yeah.
Like, no, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, girl, you can sing, you can act. Like,
right. And again, but it's already there. It's already popular. You know what I mean? Like you're not taking something that no one knows about and having to win people over. You already had a built-in audience. And yes, you did a fantastic job in the job that you were hired for, but again, you had a built-in audience that was going to go because they love the IP.
And the funniest thing to me about the funniest thing about the Wicked situation, and again, the Oscars haven't happened yet, so we don't know who's going to win. The funniest thing about the Golden Globe situation to me is that I don't even think Wicked deserved the achievement because I mean Inside Out 2 made more money than Wicked did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So to me it's so funny because Wicked, any other year, Wicked probably would have swept.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it would have won everything, right? They would have gave it Best Picture and all that bullshit. Everything. And it won one award that it didn't, in my opinion, it wasn't even the award it deserved.
Yeah.
So, they gave it to him because they have to give him some. They're not going to give him no awards, right? Because it's Wicked and it's part of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought it was so funny because it was just this thing that was literally designed to be a slam dunk, right? And by all intents and purposes, was relatively a slam dunk,
right?
But it's still, just ignored at the award ceremony.
Yeah, but here's the thing too is, and maybe it's me, maybe I'm out of touch, I don't know, but Wicked came, it did what it did, and left, and no one really talked about Wicked. It didn't have any lasting effect. Like, once Wicked was, it was out in theaters for a while, and the people that wanted to go see it went to go see it, no one really talked about, it wasn't a talked about film.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this does kind of lead into the next segment a little bit. I think in the social media age and the digital age and the on-demand age, I don't think movies have staying power anymore.
Not like they used to, but
what films do people, after 6 months and it has its initial run, and then people don't talk about any of that shit anymore.
I want to say maybe Endgame is where it ended. Potentially,
yeah, but that was right on the sort of the cusp of kind of where we are now, right?
Yeah.
Like that was still when going to the theater was sort of a normal thing, and movies were even lower budget movies were doing billions of dollars like that.
Yeah,
people were going to the movies. That people aren't going anymore.
No, and even the movies that did $1 billion, like you said, Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, right? Those movies were talked about at the time they were out, but again, even when they crossed that $1 billion mark, there wasn't a lot of chatter about those movies. There's no staying power for those movies to continue to be talked about long after they're out of theaters.
I don't think the movies have changed, though. I think the culture has changed. I think that
true.
I think that now we are in such a different sort of reality where I can watch Nosferatu, right, which I think was one of the best films of last year.
Mm-hmm.
I can watch that. I can say, "Oh man, that was incredible," right? And if someone brings it up in conversation or it comes on or whatever, I can go, "Yeah, that's fantastic," and talk about it. But when that movie ends, I can go find something of equal or greater value on demand.
Sure.
So I think what's happened is, because everything is so, instant gratification now, movies don't have the weight that they did even when Endgame came out.
Right.
Even if Marvel was still hitting home runs, right? And, Kang was really being set up to be this next Thanos level villain. I don't think people would talk about it after it was. People loved Homecoming. It had everything you could ask for. It had fan service. People don't talk about that. No,
people really don't talk about any of it, and even the streaming shows. I mean, people just don't. You don't hear. And again, you could hear people talking about it after the show comes out. You'll hear for the next couple days people reviewing the show as it just came out. But then once those reviews are over, you don't really hear. You don't hear, besides YouTubers and things like that, people reviewing it.
Right.
You don't hear the normies talking about it.
You have to go looking for it. Right. It's become more niche.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think maybe 10 years ago, or whenever Endgame came out, whatever it was.
Yeah, 2019. Yeah.
Was it that? All right, well, whatever. Before the 2020s. I think, again, I remember when Endgame came out, and I remember, for almost a year, that was a huge deal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And it just and I remember when Gladiator came out, like that was a huge deal.
Yeah.
You know, and there were the Titanic and even Avatar 1.
Yeah.
You know, Avatar 2 did $2 billion. Nobody fucking talks about.
Right.
Like, that's the thing,
Right.
is that we don't move. I think what Hollywood has kind of missed the mark on the most is that, you know, it doesn't have the staying power that it did because the culture has shifted into, you know, sort of this instant gratification.
I mean, look, when Star Wars came out, we didn't stop talking about it till Empire Strikes Back. Like, literally, we did not stop talking about it.
Well, there was no internet.
No, but you know what I mean. Like,
right, I'm just saying there was less distractions.
School, right. So, no, but that's my point is, right, because you have the internet, right, because there's so much social media, you know, you go on to whatever the next thing is. So, and this really could be anything, you know, we're talking about. But we talk about movies, and then the next day you're gonna, you know, you can talk about it, and then 5 minutes later there's something else more important than that movie that it now floods the internet. Whereas before you didn't have that, right? So we talked about movies for a year because there wasn't a lot of other things to discuss.
Right, and you don't know
what other things that were happening.
You know, and you also have to kind of remember that with Endgame too, that was when Marvel wasn't doing a movie every 3 months.
Right.
You know? Like now, what do we have, 3 this year?
Yeah.
Right. So it's one a quarter.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Almost. So you know, I just think it's I don't think Wicked did anything wrong.
No, it didn't do anything wrong.
I think if Wicked followed the blueprint like 10 years ago and came out the way that it did, it would have been, you know, a cultural icon, would have won awards galore. I just think that I think because of the culture now, and this will segue into the social media element, because of the culture now, like those type of manufactured blockbusters just don't have the weight, even when they're good, even when they're like Wicked levels of success.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the weight that they used to have sort of pre this instant gratification reality.
Right.
And let me segue into the social media side of it. What I wanted to talk about was social media has hurt creativity.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is because of its nature, it's instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
People are only posting finished products.
Yeah.
So artists are only posting their finished product, right?
Yeah.
And what that gives, as someone, you know, obviously we've been doing this professionally for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
Every job is hard.
Yep.
Every job is hard. Creating things is hard because it's a saturated market, and you know, you're also pulling, you know, from that sort of creative side of the brain. You're not using logic all the time and everything. And so, you know, you can get blocked, it can be stressful, it can be discouraging, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into the creative process,
mm-hmm.
like anything, but you know, for this. And I think what happens is, at least to me, I'll see some of the artists, you know, that I follow will post things, and they'll be great finished works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost discourages me because my brain tricks me into thinking, because I saw the finished product, it was instant gratification. It almost feels like, oh, it was easy for them.
Yeah.
Not like they didn't go through all the same blood, sweat, and tears and the doubts and the blocks and everything. We just don't get to see that anymore.
Right.
You know? And I just think I would love to see more work in progress stuff posted on. You know, I'd really much prefer to see, you know, here's my sketch.
Mm-hmm.
You know? and here's my sketch 6 months later, still working on it, like just to give people a real sense of what it actually takes to do this kind of stuff.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think it's hurting creativity, or?
Well, I
mean, it's helping too, obviously, but
yeah. Well, what again, with anything, right? You get something, and all of a sudden you see a finished product, and you're like, oh damn, look at that! Like, how do I compete with that? Right? People are always going to look for how do I compete in this market with all these others that are putting this out? And in some cases, right, you got to look at, okay, but there's all, sometimes there's a group of people, right? Like, it's not just the artist, right? They pass it on to a colorist, right?
Yeah,
sure. And so you've got like 2 or 3 professionals working on something, and that finished product comes out and it looks great, right? And then you have to then, okay, I've got to put something into the market as well, and how do I compete with this? Like, this they have. But
it's almost the discouragement of, like, because it's a finished piece right in front of you instantly, right? Mm-hmm. It almost, at least for me, it almost tricks my brain into thinking like, oh, that was easy for that guy. He just posted it. It's done. It's posted. It's out.
Right.
When that's not the case. Like, that guy could have worked on it for 6 months, and then it went to the colorist for 2 months, and then it went to the finisher for a month or whatever. And I think that can be discouraging. Is maybe for small, at least for me, it's a detriment.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is that could be that the company doesn't want. They only want the finished product out. They don't want you to put...
Sure, but I'm even talking about independent artists, right?
Sure.
Like, I'll see some of the independent guys that I follow will post their finished works, and it's just like, God damn, like, that's... must be nice how easy it is to do something like that without actually... Even as a creative myself, as someone that and I've tried. I've posted work in progress stuff, and it just doesn't hit like the general public. The thing that gets clicks is the finished product. But like, as a creative who follows other creatives, who follows other artists, who follows other people that are manufacturing and things, it can be discouraging.
Yeah.
Well,
no, and I agree with you. Like, I like personally, I like seeing work in progress because I know what stage you're in. I know what you're going through.
Who's awesome about that is Capullo.
Sure. Absolutely. He'll
be like, oh, working on a panel, and I'm like, this motherfucker is a machine. But at least I know he's
right.
At least it's not like, here's a finished ink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, this fucking guy just
right. But your normal, your fellow artist is going to appreciate that. But your regular person who just likes comic book art, they don't care. They want. I want to see a finished product. They want to just see the finished product, click like, and move on to the next finished product. They're not truly appreciating. They're appreciating the art,
right?
And it's a pretty picture, not the work.
And what I guess my point to it all is not. I don't ever expect to change Gen Pop, right? Like, mm-hmm. They want what they want,
right?
Right. I wish there was, more of a call from other artists and things to kind of, share the work in progress stuff, because it's better for everyone, to realize that we're all going through it to put these pieces out. Like, it's it's not easy for anybody.
No, but it's also one of those things where if you don't actually physically do it yourself, then it doesn't resonate with you. As far as you look at the work in progress, it's like, that's just a few pencil lines. Like, show me when the picture is done, right? Because they're not looking at, because they don't know, right? They're just looking at it and they're like, yeah, you got some, it's pencil. It's not finished. It looks, like it's going to be, good, but I want to see it when it's got the colors on it and it's vibrant and all of that stuff. But because they're not going through the process, they don't know how hard and difficult it is to get to that point.
No, I'm just saying, it's like, I would like to see a call from my fellow creatives mm-hmm. to sort of, post more work in progress stuff. Not so much for the views, but just to kind of keep us as sort of creatives all, you know, on the same page and not get that demotivation of fuck, like, you know, it's easy for you.
Right. And, you know, and that's and that's one of the things, you know, you brought up Capullo, and one of the things, like, sometimes they'll say, this friggin' page took me all day. Like, I couldn't, like, I was, you know, having a difficult time. I finally got it. And you look at it and say...
But he's really the only one I can, you know, like McFarlane, I love him, one of the greatest, my idol. He doesn't really post a lot of stuff like that, right? Like, again, he's not really in the game anymore.
Right.
But, you know, even, you know who will do that sometimes is like Libra Mejo sometimes will post pencil.
Yeah. You know, the other one who does, and this is probably is Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld will also show you pages unfinished.
Right.
And that may be the Image guys, you know what I mean? Maybe the Image guys, that was one of the, you know, that was a thing they came up with.
I just think it's better, you know, as a community. You know, I'm not talking about the Gen Pops and getting the algorithm to cooperate. I'm saying as a community of artists that we are, I think it's better for us to, you know, remind each other that, like, none of this is instantaneous. Like, it's instantaneous for Gen Pop. Right? Just like a movie is, right? It's instantaneous. We talk about movies. Blood, sweat, and tears go into making movies. Blood, sweat, and tears go into making art. Blood, sweat, and tears go into making the products we make. I don't expect or want Gen Pop to understand any of that. That's not what their role is in the consumption of it. Right? Their role is to consume it, feedback, whether they like it or pay for it or whatever, how it makes them feel. That's their role in the game. But as a creative, I look at Capullo and I'm like, this dude is helping me get through it because he's where he is, and he'll post and be like, I'm fucking, it's today wasn't the day.
Right. And that, you know, and that's the thing, right? When it's and maybe the end product, his end product is better than my end product, right? But at the end of the day, when you hear his struggles and that, boy, I didn't have this today, or this really, you know, I was having a hard time with this today. Perspective.
Right.
Or, you know, you're like, shit, that's a professional who has the same issues I'm having. Now, at the end of the day, we both get through it, and again, his product may be better than my product because he's more, you know, he's been doing it longer, and he's got, you know, just talent level is what it is. But it's nice to know that we all struggle to get that final product out. And
it can kind of help with the despair spiral a little bit.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because, like, I'll if I'm in a block, or I can't figure something out, or I'm working on a piece and it's not my day, and then I see a tweet from him.
Yep.
And he, you know, even if it's an old one or whatever, and it's just like, today sucked, I couldn't do it. It just it's just like, okay, so on, you know, we're all trying to do this thing that's really hard to do, which is create. Right?
Yep.
And even the kings struggle.
Right.
You know, and I think, you know, I wish they would do it in cinema too. I wish they would talk about the struggles and stuff, because again, as someone that's in the creative space, that the general population isn't going to care. You know, oh, go cry about it, buddy, right? But as someone that's in a creative space, that motivates me to keep going.
Right. And I also think that, you know, what also is the gratification of your finished product. When you finally finish and you get to post your finished product, you're like, look, that was difficult. That took a lot to get there. And,
right,
and
but at least for me, like when I post now, you know, maybe at the beginning it was different, but like now when I post something, even if it took 18, 20, 40 hours to do, I never post that with the expectation that anyone is going to recognize the work that went into it. Right?
No, they won't. But my thing is, even if you get a couple likes, you know, at least, yeah, thank you for appreciating what that final product is, because you may not understand how hard it was to get that out, and you may not understand or care about the time it took, But you get even a single like. It's like, thank you. At least somebody appreciated my struggle. They're not going to understand the struggle, but you showed me some appreciation for my finished product, and that is, that becomes a motivating factor. Like, okay, now I want to move on to the next one and do this all over again, because as hard as it was, you got it, you finished it and you got it out, and it's there for the world to see, and hopefully you get a positive reaction.
I'll give you one more unpopular opinion, but I want to move on. But when an artist likes my work, that means a lot.
Sure.
Because it's someone that gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things where to survive in this business, we need Gen Pop to like what we're doing.
Sure.
We do. And I want to affect Gen Pop. I want to affect people that don't understand what goes into making these things.
Yeah.
But when an artist that I respect likes one of my pieces, like, that hits different.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just
does.
Because it's someone that knows that, the time and effort that went into making something.
Well, that's the thing. They can appreciate the effort put into it. They know what the effort is. I mean, again, unless you're somebody like a Jim Lee, right? I mean, most of us are.
But even he has his days, man.
No, he does. But I'm saying, again, Jim Lee sometimes can, just whip something out and it's a masterpiece, right? Most of us, most artists, even your top professionals, that they're still struggling to a certain degree, and when they appreciate your struggle, knowing like, hey, I get it, I know you probably, that must have been some effort, so good on you to follow it all the way through and not give up on it and say it's too difficult, I can't do it. No, you did it, you got it out, you got it finished. And
well, I wish that we were more open on social as artists with each other about that, because I mean, like, since we joined the Cartoonist Society and having talked to some of these people, like, it's given me a new sort of for my fellow creatives, because we talk about that sort of stuff, and it's like we're very fortunate to have that space, but at the same time I'm thinking people that aren't able to sort of get there still need an outlet, and I think we as artists and creatives in general should be pushing that harder on a social space.
We should. Everybody, we should be looking at the struggle and trying to work together to say, yeah, dude, I get it. Like, keep going. Like, get it done.
You're gonna get up the mountain,
right? Exactly.
But you mentioned Liefeld, and I want to, before we close this out, I want to talk about sort of what's going on with him right now.
Yeah, I mean, so after 30 years at Marvel, he decides to quit because of the Deadpool and Wolverine situation. He
now, just to be clear, like, both on DC side and on Marvel side, the cinematic universe is absolutely notorious for kind of putting the creators and the artists in the back seat.
Right. But here's why the Rob Liefeld thing to me hit a little different, right? So, again, he felt slighted. Pictures on the red carpet were erased. Kevin Feige wouldn't associate with him. He didn't get the after party invite, right? So he felt, completely ignored and disrespected. So he decides, you know what, Marvel, screw you, I'm done, right? And here's where I really side with Rob Liefeld, right? Because we know the creatives get screwed over. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Kevin Feige is not a creative genius at all.
Kevin Feige hasn't created anything.
Right. So my point is, giving Kevin Feige credit for anything is ridiculous. Kevin Feige took 80 years of established characters and stories.
Hold on. You have to give Feige credit for making superheroes mainstream in cinema.
No, I give Jon Favreau credit because he started Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk and Captain America, and then Marvel bought them and Feige joined after that. So I give Jon Favreau credit. I don't give Kevin Feige shit. Kevin Feige's a fucking afterthought.
I mean, the thing of it is, right, is that obviously the cinematic side of things is a different, it's a different universe than the comics.
Sure.
But you're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Right, but it's very easy to say, all of these characters are created, they're completely fleshed out. Here's a ton of stories that are already written. Just translate this to the movies.
Right.
But you're the director and you're the writer. You're gonna do it. Kevin Feige just oversees what's going on. He's not doing shit. This guy gets so much credit for doing virtually nothing.
Well, I think initially he got all this praise and credit because, again, I think from Iron Man to Endgame, it was 90% home runs.
Sure.
And regardless of Feige's influence in all of that, he's the guy at the top, so he's gonna reap the rewards, right?
Right.
Now that we've kind of, moved away from sort of that initial run, and we're getting into sort of more of this obscure stuff, and Feige's kind of asserting more control and everything. We're kind of seeing with all these failures that maybe Feige isn't a godsend
right.
for superhero films.
But here's where though the Rob Liefeld thing comes into play for me.
Okay.
Right. Rob Liefeld, Kevin Feige can look at all of these other movies that have come out, right? And you could say Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and John Romita, right? John Byrne, all this. They're not alive any longer, right? So Kevin Feige...
Yeah, but they still deserve the credit.
No. What I'm saying is Rob Liefeld, Deadpool is popular, but Rob Liefeld is still right there. Rob Liefeld is Deadpool. Kevin Feige has nothing to do with Deadpool, right? There's nothing that he can take credit for because he can't take credit for, because it's not the creators who are dead. Rob Liefeld is right there saying, no. Everything is mine. All you did was put it on the screen. That character is mine. Those stories are mine. So Rob Liefeld represents something that Kevin Feige is, which is a creator. And so I think that Rob Liefeld got shit on by Kevin Feige because Kevin Feige can't take credit for shit by creators that are dead, because this creator is in the spotlight saying, I deserve my credit because you can't take the credit from me or pretend because or not give it to me because I'm no longer alive, like a lot of these others when the movies that you were making where those creators aren't with us anymore. And so I think that Kevin Feige took offense to Rob Liefeld having to be that associated with Deadpool, where Kevin Feige is not there's no association with him whatsoever.
Right. It's kind of a similar sort of version of Stan Lee in a way.
Yeah.
Stan the Man took a lot of credit for a lot of shit he didn't do.
Right. For sure.
And people remember his name.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is this, is that what I don't understand is why would you not want to give Liefeld the credit?
Exactly. Because again, you want the credit for being the creative genius behind it, and you're not. You're not. The guy standing next to you that you're ignoring is the guy that deserves the credit. All you did was translate
you still get to, and I don't blame Liefeld. He wanted his name, in the beginning of the credits, just like Feige's name is at the beginning of the credits, and Feige didn't want to do it.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just like,
and he wanted to ignore him on, again, yeah, you can have Ryan Reynolds and say, yeah, you brought the character to life, you're an actor, and that's fine, but but once again, Rob Liefeld is Deadpool, not Ryan Reynolds.
right. Rob Liefeld created the character of Deadpool. He wrote the stories. He did the illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those. It's similar to Todd McFarlane, right? Like
Right.
I would expect if Spawn ever somehow makes it back into cinema, that you would give Todd McFarlane, whether he's involved intimately or not that he would ever not be, but
Right.
if he somehow wasn't, it's still Todd McFarlane's Spawn.
Right. And he is going to be front and center to every red carpet and every, interview, and his name is going to be right there front and center. It absolutely will be. There's
Right,
no
but
doubt about
But the
it.
thing of it is that let Liefeld have his moment. Like the interviewers are still going to want to interview Ryan Reynolds over Rob
Sure.
Liefeld because that's just the nature of the beast. But let the man have his credit.
Right.
You're standing on the shoulders of a giant that's alive,
Right.
and let him give the interview. Let him have his name at the beginning of the movie. Invite him to the fucking after party. Like,
right. And so, yeah, I agree. Rob Liefeld should have quit Marvel. He should say, I'm not going to work. I'm never going to work for you again with that type of disrespect. You did, this is my creation, and you're trying to give credit to Kevin Feige, who has nothing to do with it. He really had nothing to do with the movie's success.
He's a back end guy. He's just like, what credit, regardless of how you feel about him, but like, what credit do you give Bob Iger? He didn't design the parks. He didn't design the Disney name. He didn't design any of the Disney characters.
Yeah.
He just runs the ship.
Right. That's it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could say he was at the front of Disney Plus, and then Chapek took over to get it launched. But Disney Plus is such a failure. Do you want to take credit for that?
Right. But even with something like that, like he's just giving the order. He's not creating anything.
No.
So at the end of the day, this has always puzzled me. Is that I can understand wanting to be the boss and bask in the limelight of other people's work. That's just how this fucked up system is, right? Like, that's how these people are. But even if you put Liefeld's name at the beginning, right? Even if during interviews you said some bullshit like, yeah, we made a lot of creative decisions, but ultimately, the character had a solid base, and Rob Liefeld knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? Just give the man his credit. It's not
Right.
It's not gonna discount from, the manufactured credit that you've received.
Right, exactly. You're still going to be looked at as the head of the MCU regardless, and you're still going to get credit whether you deserve it or not. You're still going to get your credit, but why did you, to disrespect the creator of this movie that went on to make $1 billion, and to just outright disrespect the man where you wouldn't even, be seen with him on the red carpet. Not even you outright just totally refuse to acknowledge the man, and then deleted all his pictures.
If he didn't exist, you wouldn't have this.
Right, exactly.
It's not like you're coming up with this.
Right, and that's the thing is you got the stolen valor. Because
that's what it feels like.
Because you got to steal all of the stuff of all the creators that are no longer with us, because they can't sit there like Rob Liefeld did and call you the piece of shit that you are, because they're no longer with us. But that's the thing. You're getting to take credit for making these movies from comics of the greats, but those greats aren't there to tell you how little you've contributed, and it's all them. But you don't want to give them credit either. You don't hear even the ones that are dead. the creators that are dead, you don't hear them getting credit. Sure, you hear Stan Lee's name bandied around, whatever. You know, when Fantastic Four comes out,
all you hear is Stan Lee and sometimes Jack Kirby.
right? But when Fantastic Four comes out, if Jack Kirby is not, if I don't hear Jack Kirby's name every other word, then I don't want to fucking hear it, because there is no Fantastic Four without Jack Kirby.
But the thing is, right? Even in the Batman, right? Mm-hmm. Jack Kirby didn't get a credit in the front, and he should have.
In the Batman,
yeah. I don't think. I mean, you know, I'd have to rewatch it, but what I tend to see is these artists aren't. You'll get a created by Jack. He got credit right at the end during.
No, are you talking about?
I want to see created by Jack Kirby at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, well, any creator.
Right, any creator is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that's not going to affect everybody else's limelight. That just gives the credit to the person that created the idea.
And look, yeah, there are a lot of normies that go see the MCU movies or
right, and
DC
it would mean nothing to them anyway.
No, but what I'm saying is, even if you put Rob Liefeld, right, they may not know who it is. What they do know is, though, that these comic books came before the MCU. So they know that these were created not by you. Any normie knows that. They may not know by who, and if you say Rob Liefeld, they may not know who that is.
But the thing is,
they know that it wasn't by you.
But the thing is, right, is that Kevin Feige always gets his name at the beginning of the credits. Right. And even if from the beginning you were putting the creators' names at the front credits, right? People are still going to remember Kevin Feige, and maybe they won't remember Love. Like, it's not about getting Gen Pop to acknowledge it. It's just about acknowledging the role. It's about the corporate overlords acknowledging that regardless of the money, there is, the creative element is important to the machine.
Right. Of which you created zero. These are comics, characters, stories that you're just taking from page to screen. That's all you're doing. And you're not doing it.
But again,
even
look,
that.
You can argue that Marvel provides a platform for artists to be able to financially support themselves while they create. So there is a symbiotic relationship there. But again, I just don't. There's always going to be your front men, right? But to not acknowledge the people that are doing the real work,
right?
That's not going to change who the front man is,
right?
It's just gonna, not slight the creators,
right,
and make them bitter.
Yeah, and it's been something that's been talked about for a very long time, right? We've had, even some creators that are alive, like, hey, that scene right there is from this comic that I drew. They stole it right there, but there's no credit. They don't say, this was from the page of this.
Right, but,
what I mean? Like, there's zero credit.
I'm not saying it has to go that deep. I'm just saying that at the beginning
no credit.
At the beginning of the movie, just give the guy his card.
Right, and that's the problem. The creatives are saying we're getting zero credit for what we've created, which we've allowed you to turn into these big blockbusters. And what skin do you lose by doing that? Like,
that's where I get lost in it, right? Because ultimately, yes, Marvel or Disney or DC or whoever, even Image to a degree, has clout. They have money. They have marketing teams. They're going to be able to put these ideas that maybe someone who's independent couldn't get in front of Gen Pop, and then grow them, whether it's no matter what the format is, whether it's comics, whether it's movies, whatever.
Right.
So there is, they are important to the equation.
Sure.
But it should be a symbiotic relationship, not a master servant relationship.
Yeah.
And by not putting their names at the beginning of things, it feels like they don't want to acknowledge the importance of the creation.
Right. And that's the thing. You want to it's like you're taking the credit for the creation of what we're about to see on screen, and that's not what happened. You aren't the creative force behind it. Put the creators who actually created it, because again,
right, and it's not, and like I said, it's not doing that is not gonna make General Pop go, oh, Rob Liefeld. It's not like, Rob, you're a creator, like you are in the background. That's how it works,
right?
But it's about the pride and acknowledgement of your accomplishment. It's not about the fame or the recognition from the general population.
Rob has the money is not. He's not looking for the money. You know what I mean? Like that's not
what it
an
was
issue
about
for him.
It truly is a matter of don't spit in the face of the people that are building your empire.
Right, exactly. And again, you lose nothing. You lose nothing by doing it, and you gain so much. And that's, I think, what I think Rob Liefeld took umbrage with is what harm would that do to you? Like, how does that negatively impact you whatsoever? But you've totally slighted me to the point where I've quit the company now after 30 years of being here,
right,
how insulted I feel.
But because of their mentality, because of these people's mentality, they go, well, instead of saying, we don't want to lose a guy that's created such an iconic character because, one, he's going to have the best stories in him, and two, what else could he create?
Right.
They just go, well, we already got Deadpool, so fuck off.
Exactly. We get the best. We've already got the best of you.
Right, we've got the best of you, so
yeah. So see you later. It doesn't matter.
And it's just like you can't. Look, we live in a capitalist society. Cash is king at the end of the day, and it keeps the wheels turning. So but there is just such a juxtaposition between art and business. And it's just like you can't treat the people that are creating these enormous characters or pieces of art like they're throwaway,
Yeah, that their accomplishment really isn't as important as they make it out to be. Like, yeah, what you did was cool, but we're going to make it cooler and we're going to make it more impressive. And it's like, no, that's not what you're doing. You wouldn't even be here. We wouldn't even be talking about it had it not been created and be this popular.
They're making it more digestible for Gen Pop, which I think is a good thing. As someone that loves comics and superheroes and all that kind of stuff, fantasy, Star Wars, indie, all that stuff, I think it's always good if you can get Gen Pop on board, because it allows for the money machine to be satiated, which will in turn give us more content of the stuff that we've always liked from the beginning. And that's why I'm so hard on Disney when they put out, like, Gen Pop wasn't excited about Indiana Jones or Star Wars.
No.
You know what I mean? So it's like you're taking these things that we love and you're not doing your job. Your job is to make it digestible for everybody.
Right.
And when you don't do that, that means we don't get any more of it. And, now it's locked behind the Disney vault, and none of the talented creators have access to it.
Right, exactly.
It's just a bizarre situation. I'm good for Rob for sticking to his values.
No, exactly. I'm 100% behind his reason for the way he feels and for how he handled the whole situation.
Yeah,
good on him.
I read an article that called him a diva.
Yeah, that's the furthest thing from the truth.
And I was just like, how can you say that?
Yeah.
Like, he wants credit for the character that he created, drew, and wrote
Yeah.
the story for.
I mean, again, that he's looking for respect.
It's not about fame. It's
Right.
not about money.
Right.
It's just
He's-
about acknowledgement.
Yeah, you disrespected the man for 30 years of writing and drawing this character, and what you think that it's diva-ish behavior because he wants to be acknowledged as the creative force behind this character, and he wants the credit where the credit is rightfully due. No, he has every right to feel and do the things that he's done.
Yeah, that's a rotten situation.
Yeah.
But with that one, I know we went long today, but it's been
Yeah,
a while.
been a
so
while.
you guys, thanks for sticking with us if you're still here. But that about wraps up episode 107. We'll put this one to bed. Jim, as always,
Yeah.
glad you're still
Yeah,
hanging out.
Thanks. I'm
Jeez.
glad to be here.
What's going on, man?
Well, thankfully I'm back to drawing, so check out the socials, check out the new pieces of art every week. Back at it.
All right, guys. So that's 107 in the corner. You know where we're at. CatalystCrafting.com is the main website. Catalyst Creations NH is our Etsy store. Follow us on the social platforms. The more clout we get, the more we can push out the art and the content. It helps us a ton. But what movies have you guys seen? I mean, did you watch Beetlejuice? Did you like it? Have you seen Triangle? Because I have not. Now I'm going to have to check that out.
Gonna check it out, yeah.
Have you caught Nosferatu? What did you think? What did you think of Orlok's mustache? Did it bother you? What are your thoughts on the importance of music in a musical? Is it more important than the story? How do you feel about the instant gratification of social media? And would you like to see the artistic community kind of boost each other up with sort of works in progress? And who's in the right in the Rob Liefeld situation? Is it Rob or Kevin? Let us know in the comments. All right, crew.
What the hell? What is that? What is going on?
Joking.
Oh, he's dying.
Get you on the next one. Let me do the end again so I can fuck it. Oh, Jesus. All right, crew. We'll catch you on the next one.